that your CAD program can export to a format that SketchUp Pro can import. And I'll be using AutoCAD's native DWG format for this purpose. Most CAD programs will either support DWG or DXF, which are industry standard formats, and these can be brought into SketchUp. However, SketchUp can't import the current version of AutoCAD's format. Instead, you have to save it down a version first, and that's easily done. I'll go up to the File menu in AutoCAD and Save As, and change the version from 2018 to the previous version, which is 2013. I'm talking about the file format, not the actual application. So the file format came in these different increments. I'll provide you with the AutoCAD 2013 file so that that can be brought directly into SketchUp and you don't need to use AutoCAD. Now I'll switch into SketchUp Pro 2018 and I'll choose File, Import, and then select the house plan. If you can't select it, you need to change the format here. And this also gives you a sense of all of the different 3D formats that SketchUp Pro can import. You can bring in all of these formats down to here, and then everything below this item in the menu, these are all image formats. Click on Options and select Preserve Drawing Origin if it's not already selected. This is a good idea because it will match up AutoCAD's 00 point with SketchUp's origin point. This way, if you made any additional changes in your CAD program, you could re-import and the new geometry would line up. I'll click OK and import. Everything comes across correctly. I'll click Close. And then we're looking at this edge on, so we need to orbit up. Better yet, let's look at it in a top view. And let's also look at this in parallel projection so that it's a true floor plan. I'll zoom out and navigate so we can have a look at this. Let's open up the Layers window on the Mac or expand the layers in the default tray in the Windows operating system. Over here we have the same layers that we had in AutoCAD. I can toggle off various things and turn them back on. Let's also take a look at model info to get a sense of the complexity of this model. The edge count is over 15,000 here. We have 30 components, a variety of layers and materials, and so on. To reduce the complexity here, we should focus on trying to bring the edge count down. And we can do that by trying to erase anything here that we don't really need. And right off the bat, I can tell you that we don't need these car models because we're not going to be modeling cars directly from these blueprints. So let's go ahead and delete them. And when I click on this, you'll see that the whole thing selects. And this is because it comes across as a component. So to analyze the component structure, let's open up the outliner or expand it in the default tray. And the outliner shows at the top level, it shows the SketchUp model, which is currently untitled. And within that, we have a component, which contains all of this information. We can expand that, and you'll see that it has nested subcomponents. And you can click on them and see what they are. That appears to be the toilet, or at least part of it. There's a door, another door. And the reason that these have these cryptic code numbers is because something was lost in translation. These were dynamic blocks in AutoCAD, but they just come across as these numbered components here in SketchUp. I notice down here that we have an F-150 component, and this is named properly because it was a standard block, whereas the others were dynamic blocks in AutoCAD, and they don't get named properly. Let's go ahead and select F-150 and press delete, and we bring the edge count down a bit. Let's also select this car. When I click on it, what's actually happening is I'm just selecting individual stray edges here. Evidently, this didn't come across as a component. It started out as a group in AutoCAD, and that wasn't represented as a component during the importing process. So I'm going to make a window around this to select all of those edges, and then press delete. and we bring the edge count down significantly. I notice when I zoom in here that part of the toilet appears to be missing. If I click on that, you'll see that its bounding box is larger than the object. And this is always a tip-off that something is hidden. If I double click on that to open it, and then I can go up to Edit, Unhide All, you'll see the situation. In this case, we have different representations of the object from different angles. So this is like a multi-view block in AutoCAD, but here we're not really able to take advantage of that in SketchUp, so we should erase this extra information that we don't need. I'll select it and delete it. And that brings the edge count down a bit more. Now if you select one of the doors, if you're observant, you'll notice that the bounding box is a little bit bigger than the object. Again, that's a tip-off that some elements within this group or component are hidden. I'll double-click on that to open it and unhide all. This time I'll use a keyboard shortcut. And we have different representations of the door appear. I notice that when I do that, none of the other doors seem to be affected. This is actually a bad sign. It means that these doors are unique. They're not connected in any way. To see what I mean, I'll go ahead and copy this over to the side temporarily. Now, this is a copy of that, so these are siblings. Okay? So anything that I do to this sibling will affect the other one. If I go into this component now and erase parts of it to simplify it, you'll see that the changes that I make here are reflected in the sibling next door. And that's a good thing. It's typically how we want components to behave. However, this door didn't seem to be affected at all. If I double click on that and unhide all, it bears no connection with these other doors. So we're not really getting any special benefit out of using these components at all. And for that reason, I'd like to eliminate all of these components from the model. They're not really useful to me in any way. And furthermore, if you notice that, let me just undo, there's also another problem with this model, and that is we have part of the wall is in this component. So I can't just go around and delete the doors because we would be left with gaps in the wall everywhere. I'll just undo a couple of times. So instead, I think a better and more robust solution will be to actually eliminate all of these components from the model. To do so, I will select the top level here and right-click in the outliner and choose Explode. That gets rid of the top level. I'll do that again. And then one more time. So we got rid of all of those structures from the outliner. I can close the outliner now. So we have no components here. You see? 0. But we still have more edges than we need. Now, we also have hidden objects. If I unhide all, you'll see that all of those different door representations are still in the model. So we need to know how to get rid of those as well. Before I tell you that, let's go into Window Layers and take a look at what we have here. Now, this is a very simple CAD drawing. It only has about a dozen layers. Most CAD drawings have dozens or hundreds of layers. So what you'll want to do is spend some time turning off any layers that you don't think you need and eliminating any extraneous objects. So for example, I don't really need this table here. I'll just delete it. I don't think I need the chair. I'll delete that. I know I don't need the doors because these are representations more suitable to a plan. It shows the swing and the door. But in a 3D model, I'd rather actually model the door. So let's just turn off the door layer. The advantage of that is that the doors disappear, but the part of the wall remains because these are no longer parts of components anymore. They're just all in the top level. We have additional problems as some of these lines are separated here. You see? They're collinear lines, but they're in different segments. And to fix something like that, in a one-off situation, you can just draw a line here from the endpoint. Unfortunately, it created that surface there. So I'm going to undo. That's revealing another problem that we have here, and that is that there are hidden elements And we can see that too if I go up here and I draw a line across here to close off the floor area. We have this weird face up here. This type of thing will happen. I'm going to undo. When there are hidden elements. What's hidden? It's the door. And unhide all? It's these elements. So all that stuff is in the model, and it's going to cause problems for us later when we create a 3D model. So it's best to get rid of it. So you want to minimize, minimize, minimize as much as you can. When you arrive at a point like this, where what you see on the screen is what you want, it's time to transfer what's good about this model into a clean SketchUp model. This will also eliminate any potential corruption that's in the file. So for example, I'll select everything that I see that I want, and then I'll copy that to the clipboard. And anything that goes onto the clipboard by definition will not be corrupt. It's all good information. Now I can go into a new SketchUp model and then choose Edit Paste in Place. Not paste, but paste in place. This will put the information in exactly the same position with respect to the origin point. And that's good because it lines up with the AutoCAD information. I'll look at it in the top view in parallel projection mode, and there it is. Note that we're down to only 4,180 edges. We don't have any components, and we have really minimized the amount of information in this model. So now we have a clean CAD drawing that we can use as the basis of a 3D modeling project in SketchUp. When you're working with imported CAD drawings, there's typically a lot of cleanup that is necessary before you can use the information directly to create a 3D model in SketchUp. For example, in this model, I've already cleaned it up to some degree by toggling off certain layers and eliminating unneeded objects. But also over here I notice if I orbit around that some of the edges don't appear to be on the ground plane. This is something that would be quite tedious to fix manually because each vertex seems to be at a different height in elevation. Fortunately, there's a global way to fix this using an extension. I'd like to show you that now. This particular extension that I have in mind is accessible through Sketchucation's plugin library. And you can access that from this URL. First, register for a free account, and you can just click Download Now, and you'll download this RBZ file. Once it's downloaded, go back into SketchUp and choose Window, Extension Manager, and click Install Extension. Select the RBZ file and open it, and close the Extension Manager. Now up here we have a new menu that says Extensions, and we can choose Sketchucation Extension Store. And you can sort this list in different ways. There are numerous extensions that you can explore, but what I'm interested in is a specific extension, so I'll search for it by name. It is called Drop Vertices, and it's by TIG. You can download that and install it just by clicking that red button. You're warned that you're giving this access to your file system, so you want to be sure to trust this author. I'll choose yes, and then it tells me where it was installed, and I'll click OK. Then I can close the extension store, and we have a new item in the menu up here. This particular extension works with a selection, so what I need to do is orbit, make that selection, and then choose Drop Vertices, in this case to Z equals question mark, and we'll set that to 0 and click OK. That's it. All those vertices are dropped down to the ground plane. Another thing that we need to do is generate surfaces in every enclosed boundary. So for example, over here I could do that by drawing a line and tracing over an existing edge, and that would generate a surface. But this would be incredibly tedious to do manually, to trace over each edge. So fortunately, this is something that's better solved with an extension. To do this, let's go ahead and access this extension, not through the Sketchucation store, but this time through the built-in extension warehouse. First, register for a free account, And now in this case, I'll type in make faces, enter. And it's this one here. S4U make face. And it's this top item here. I'll click on it and then install. I'll say yes and OK. And then close the extension warehouse. Up here we have a new item in the menu, make face. Again, it needs a selection, so I'll make a selection including everything in the model, and I'll choose make face. It generates surfaces in each enclosed boundary. So it worked really well, but it also subdivided the floor into these different sections where we have furniture, and that's not really what I intended. So I'm going to undo and then go to Window, Layers, and toggle off the furniture layer, and then select everything again and use Make Face. Because it works on the selection, it generates a surface filling up the whole floor area. I'd like to draw in a line here to cut off the outside and separate it from the inside. We also need, it looks like I'll go in the top view, and it looks like we need another line right over here to generate a surface in the garage. So we have different surfaces in each enclosed boundary area. I'll turn the furniture layer back on, and observe that the furniture is now shown in bold because these are considered to be stray edges that do not define surfaces. We can clean all of this up globally using another script. And this script will clean up the line work. It will take care of things like stray edges and cases where we have multiple collinear lines. It will join them together. To access this last extension, go back to the warehouse and type in cleanup. Enter. We're looking for cleanup cubed, which is a script by TomTom. Here it is. I'll click on it and then install. Yes and OK. Now another window pops up in this case, and it informs us that TT-lib2 is not installed. This is a script library that's required in many of TomTom's extensions. So I'm going to scroll down here and click on the requirement link, TT-lib2, and then install that as well. Yes and OK. And because of this two-part nature of the library being separate from the cleanup script, we do not see it up here in the menu. What we'll have to do is save this file, and I'll call it CAD import 2, and then quit SketchUp, relaunch SketchUp, and then you'll see a new item in the extensions menu right here. Cleanup cubed, clean. You don't need a selection in this case if your scope is set to the entire model. Local would be in the case where you want to run this inside of a group or a component, and the scope selected would just apply to the selection. I want to apply it to the entire model. I want to show statistics at the end. I'll purge anything that's unused, including components, materials, styles, and layers. I'll erase any hidden geometry. I don't need to erase duplicate faces. It's very slow. And we shouldn't really have any duplicates because we just generated these faces. I'll move all the geometry to layer 0, thereby eliminating all of these CAD layers. I'll merge any identical materials, ignoring their attributes. I don't need to merge coplanar faces. If I did, I'd end up with just a single face, because all of the faces in the model right now are coplanar, namely, they're on the ground plane. Down here, repair split edges is what will join any collinear lines together. Erase stray edges will erase any edges that are shown in bold, such as the furniture in here. And I'll go ahead and click Clean Up. It gives us a listing of what it did. It reduced over 3,000 edges. It got rid of 1 component, 10 layers, 7 materials. And let's take a look at model info on statistics, and you'll see that we're down to just over 1,100 edges. We have 100 faces. We have no materials, just the default layer and just the default style. So I think we've reduced this probably as much as is possible here, and we're in a good place now to begin a 3D modeling project using this CAD data.